Yeah, but it's not working. I gotta. Unfortunately I'm using my PC camera. I'm not sure why it's not on, but I may be able to get it in a minute. But let me get the presentation shared first. Okay. Bob, can you confirm that the presentation's on?
It is.
Okay, hopefully I don't mask too much of this. Colin? Yeah. This will change the slides and this will move them too.
Okay.
There's this, all the video pictures on the bottom.
Yeah.
Will interfere with this and I don't know how to get them off.
Yeah, I probably.
So
yeah,
you just move it down the bottom,
I
okay?
throw them on my other monitor at home.
Yeah, I know, but there's too much going on tonight. I'm gonna just stick around over here and I'm in the frame here someplace. Yeah, over here. So what I'll do is I'll try to stand up over here.
All right.
And work on this way.
And I'll just peek.
And you can
I'll
just
stay out of the way.
peek out of there, okay? The camera should work. It's just that it's I need to find the maybe I can do it, but I think you gotta go to stop video, pull this down. Oh, there it is. Okay.
Oh, it's alive.
It's Memorex. Okay. All right. So now we just turn it.
Does it aim at somebody that,
No,
does it?
no.
It doesn't aim at a voice?
Cut the control. Now let's see what it looks like. Over here. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Yeah.
Should be fine. Then I don't think your head's in it either.
No.
Okay, good.
Do you need a mic?
I
got a
have
mic?
one, but I don't really need
What
it.
about for the peeps over here? Will they hear you without the mic?
Yeah, the mic is pretty good at picking up. In fact, it's
This
this thing.
guy here.
Yeah, we're hearing you pretty well there.
Yeah, it picks me up pretty well. It's actually the room that's harder to hear. But
Sure.
when I put the mic on the speakerphone, you really get good projection into the room. So people could really hear everybody speaking remotely on the Zoom. Okay. Are we doing on the? Go check on the.
That's right. It's just all the hands on. PHF, 7 Full bench bottom, wide box, I get them all in there. Oh, yeah. Oh, it could like.
You guys need the mic to hear me, or you're okay? If you can't hear me in the back, raise your hand.
Can you hear me better through the mic?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll use the mic. Okay, we're gonna get the raffle organized right now, so let's get working here. First question for the audience here, because we're gonna, I'm gonna do this, it's gonna be in the chat. If you're remote, please sign into the chat with your call sign and name.
Location.
Well, only a location, call sign, so we know you're here. All right, so the simple question is pi a real number? Real number. Okay, who wins?
Pretty sure I said.
Well, yeah, but it's a real number. It's not, all right, okay, hold on a minute, that's fine. Okay, when is Pi Day? So tomorrow? Okay, so we got,
March 14th.
okay, so each of those guys get a buck back.
So we're giving money back
Yeah.
to each of the guys.
Mary got it too.
And Mary got it?
Yep.
Okay, put aside $1 for Mary.
And Bob.
I'm just gonna do it right.
But then it's who got it first kind of.
Well, how can I do
Just
both at
look
the
in the,
same time?
you can't. We'll look in the chat and we'll give them back we'll look in the chat to see who answered it first. Okay? Okay, here's a tricky one. What is tau?
2 pi.
Who got that first? You got it first, Corey? Okay, 2 pi is tau. Okay, so when is 2 pi? Or when is tau day?
628.
All right, okay, everybody wins that, so nobody gets anything. Okay. All right, this one comes from John, although somebody's come from John Mills, but one is a good one, I thought, was what is the area of a circle whose radius is pi? No, what's the area of a circle with a radius pi? Yeah. Who said pi cubed? Jeff? Okay, he gets a buck. Okay, pi cubed is the answer. Pi times pi times pi. Okay, how many radians are in a full circle? 2 pi, I heard that one. All the other answers are tau and 6.28 plus. Okay, is pi a ratio of 2 whole numbers?
No.
Yes. No. Steve, you win. It's not really a ratio of 2 numbers, but we represent it as a ratio of 2 numbers. It's a ratio of 3.9. Approximately. But there's another question on that, Steve, so just be quiet over there for a minute. Okay, what is the biblical value of pi? Biblical value 3. This is from 1 Kings chapter 7, verse 23. You are curious. Okay, here's one you got to put your thinking cap on. Is 22/7 larger or smaller than pi? I heard you say it. I heard you say it.
I said it's, sorry.
No. You said, who said more? Somebody said more. No? You said less. Okay, that's wrong. So is 22/7 bigger or smaller than pi? No, it's bigger. It's slightly bigger. Okay, but somebody figured that out and determined that pi was between 22/7 and 223/71. Who do you think did that? No. Nope. Nope, not Pythagoras, not Archimedes. I almost gave it away. Archimedes. I get the $1 for that. Okay, we're almost in. What is the 10,000th fractional digit of pi? And there's a hint. It's not in the first 10 digits of pi. And does anybody know what the 10,000 digit is?
7.
No. 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 0. 8. Who said 8? 8. Jeff, you're gonna get all this money back. The answer is 8, and I verified it. I have references if you need them. Okay, almost done. How many digits of pi are published? You have four choices: 6.28 trillion, 62.8 trillion, 628 trillion, or 6.2 quadrillion.
Who wrote them all down?
You guys see?
Put in down Charlie out.
No. Is it 6.28, 62.8, or 628 trillion? Or one more 6.28 quadrillion? I have not heard the answer yet. 62.8 trillion. This was done in 2021. The University of Applied Sciences of the Grissons. It calculated an additional 1.4 trillion digits, bringing the total to 62.8 trillion decimal places. And what is arguably the most boring book?
That book.
Yeah, pi to 50,000 decimal places. And there was one that was to 5,000 decimal places, but the guy made a mistake, I think, at 2,300 or something. So he got thrown out. And there's, let's see, one more, and then the other one, nobody's going to get, I don't think. What state tried to legislate the wrong value of pi in 1897? And the state begins with one of the two letters in pi.
Indiana.
Indiana.
Was Mississippi. They legislated pi to be free.
Was the computer ENIAC, the electronic numerical integrating something or other computer. What did that computer use to compute pi? What formula? I'm not going to wait for that one. The formula is by John Macon in 1706. It says that tau over 2 or pi over 4 is equal to 4 times the arctangent of 1/5 minus the arctangent of 1 over 239. If you're not sure and you haven't memorized that, I have a bilingual cup in the back that you can go and reference to look for it. Don't take my cup though, it comes from NASA. Okay, thank you. All right, that's it. Did you enjoy that? Thanks for joining us. So his suggestion, we did it. Okay. Oh, Mike, can you X that out? X that window out? What time it is here, but we got to get moving. Yeah, okay. This is not going to be, I've narrowed this down to under 3 hours, so we should be all set. Okay. All right. Some time ago, the club embarked on an idea to do mesh radio. Oh, we haven't done a raffle. Yeah, sorry about that. Yep.
How many we drawing?
1, 2.
One more?
I'm going to save, why don't we save 2 of those bags for people who answered the questions right from the remote stuff, and we'll save those bags for them. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4 plus the remaining raffle. Let's do the main raffle first. Is that right? Oh, I'm picking? Oh, I can pick mine. Good.
Last 3 digits, 872. Up front?
I did. Thank
One
you.
right out. Very good. Which one does he get, Paul?
I thought we were going to give them the money prize first, because that was the first one. That's the best way to do it.
Oh, we were going to do 50-50 too.
Yeah. All right. Who won? We got who won this? Okay. You won the 50-50. We'll figure out what 50-50 is shortly. And we'll give you the money. Okay. All right. So, but we have other gifts to give out too. We have 2 bags in the back and these 2 items here. So let's pull another.
What is it?
You get to pull a.
Who is on this?
If you don't like the gift, you can bring it back to give it back away next month. Well, you can give it back here. Okay, pick another one. John, you might pick one. Otherwise, they're gonna keep picking my ticket.
Last 3 digits, 950.
That's me.
Let's see it.
I'm taking this one. Okay, next one.
Let's see your ticket.
Oh. Is it? Oh, okay. All right, so I can't. Shucks.
Nancy.
Nancy, you want to grab a pick another one? Sorry, we have so many things to give away, but we do.
860. Yeah.
Okay, you have your choice of any of the 4 bags in the back. Are those, are there 2 other bags in the back there too? There's 4. Okay, any of those 4 bags in the front or this box? You can't get door number 1. In fact, I've got door number 1 at the house and you can put it up for me. Okay, well, we gotta keep this moving here. Okay, Keith, gotta pick one.
$5.8.
858.
I passed.
Okay.
I want it, but I passed.
Okay, all right, guys, pick another ticket.
No. Here. 941.
The bag or a box?
Yeah, how many more we got?
One more.
One more.
One more.
All right.
You get the box or the bag? The little box is mine, don't touch it.
878.
878 again? All right. Hey, say. Put it back in. Yeah, okay, pick another one. Okay, what we're gonna do for the people at home is we'll go through the chat and try to figure out who got the pie questions, and then we will find a way to get you one of the bags. So there's two questions.
930.
There you go. You get the box, I guess, right? Is there, the bag was taken last? So you get the big box there. Okay, let's get this show on the road. Okay, nice job, everybody. Thank you, and thank you for contributing. We use the raffle to offset some of the food and also field day food, which is the historical way to do it, but we're adding a little food component to the meetings. Okay. All right, you can trade the stuff later. You cannot play with it now. Dick, you can't play with the stuff now. Please. I know it's tempting, but whatever. Okay, all right, so go back one slide. I don't know what happened. Okay, some time ago, we started a project to use mesh radio. It was, I think, Mike Cullen who inspired me to look into a group out in California called the Amateur Radio Emergency Data Network. And they had done some wonderful stuff. Well, I'll explain what it was a little bit. But they were using the Wi-Fi bands, which are 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, 5.8 gigahertz. There are ham bands in there. I'll explain that in a second. Anyway, it occurred to me that this was now the new shortwave radio. The shortwaves back in the day were 80 meters, which are not so short. But now shortwaves are really short, and people are using them shorter and shorter. And so I thought maybe we'd call it the new shortwave radio. And we would pick from 1 to 10 gigahertz to include the 2.4 and 5.8 mesh Wi-Fi bands, but there's plenty of bands in between. We reuse the Amateur Radio Emergency Data Network software that we can load into a very inexpensive router. There are 2 routers in the back that are connected to each other. If you want to see them live, on your way out. They're actually linked to each other, even though they're close, so they're going to work, but they're linked. And we were able to. So anyway, ARRL said, if you got an educational project and you want to dream, go ahead and dream, and we'll probably fund you. Well, we dreamed a little bit and said, we want $8,000 because we want to get some equipment to set up a sensor network and get youth involved, even if they don't have the cash to buy their own equipment. And also, it was, I guess this one was me. We all have these inexpensive vector network analyzers called nano VNAs. I should all, but many of us have these, and they're good up to about 1 gigahertz, but they're really not good past 300 megahertz for anything detailed. And so there is a 6 gigahertz, a nice 6 gigahertz vector network analyzer, which we purchased with these funds. There's none of this project that's coming out of those funds. It's all coming out of the grant. So we have that vector network analyzer, and I brought it with me. I'll show it to you later, but I don't want to tie up the presentation. So that was awarded in December, and that's what I want to talk about. Okay, where did the word ARTEN come from? Well, I did some work on it, came up with this name. ARTEN is a force to compel or induce something to happen in Latin. It's also a Swedish term that happens to have the little umlaut thing on it, meaning a singular definition of art. So I thought that putting the umlaut dots on the A made it sort of represent a charged dipole radiating knowledge. So there's something to the ARTEN word. And the 10 stands for Training Experience Network. And it also is a nod to the 10 gigahertz limit that we put on the project. So that's where ARTEN came from. I trademarked it only, I put a trademark only, I didn't really trademark it, didn't register it, but I put it because the ARTEN people got into a dispute later about who could use the word ARTEN. So I wanted to get that out of the way. I don't really care if somebody uses it. These are the amateur bands in the 1 to 10 gigahertz ranges. We'll allow 900 megahertz, but 1.2 is used for moon bounce quite a bit. 23, 33s are all bands that you have access to. We may lose the 9 centimeter band, but there are special ham channels within these bands that are uniquely amateur. So we wanted to use those, and we have radios. I mean, our home routers can be reprogrammed to operate these bands. So the equipment is pretty inexpensive. And we want to keep using our spectrum because if we don't use it, we could lose it. And that's another incentive for doing that. Okay, the concept behind this thing is this grant, at least, was that we would plan and own an array of local mesh nodes and encourage attachment by any ham to that network. And it's available to entry-level technicians and higher class licensees. We would use traffic using only open protocols and not encrypt our transmissions in case, except in emergency situations, which has little to do with the project. There's a lot of dispute about whether you can use encryption on these bands anyway. So we decided let's just not use it as a standard practice. However, people will be tempted to use encryption on this band because some of it's automatic whenever you use a browser. So we will be looking for encrypted protocols on the bands as part of a networking exercise. And in fact, learning how to do that and how to find different protocols on the network would actually be a good exercise in cybersecurity. So there's an element we can pull in on cybersecurity as well. Internet connections. This means that we can connect our network to the real internet, or the, I don't know which one's real. I like to think of ours as the real one, but anyway, we can connect our local network to an internet, and therefore everybody on the local net could also get to the internet. We may or may not do that on a permanent basis, but we may do it occasionally because there's some value to our plan for that. We're not trying to give people internet connections. That would be a commercial exercise. So we're trying to keep the equipment at pretty low cost to encourage youth access. Most of the components we're using are less than $50. We can put a station together for $100. Some of our nodes will be more in the $500 range because they'll have solar panels and things like that. We'll talk about that. And all of this is done by just reprogramming a Wi-Fi router like you have at the house. I don't recommend you reprogram the one you use for your house, but you could. And the other cool thing about 1 to 10 gigahertz is everything's a foot or less in wavelength. And that makes all of these antenna type projects something that could easily be 3D printed, and all kinds of ideas on how to do 3D printed horns, 3D printed brackets, all kinds of things. Because we're only talking about things that are either 1 foot to 1.2 inches in wavelength. And we're going to make all our learning material, YouTubes, and online documents available for everyone. That's just a part of what we wanted to do. Okay, this is a node that we've been using. Typical, the little white thing in the, I don't have my pointer yet, I don't have a laser pointer, but the little white thing is the $30 router. The black thing is a 4-watt amplifier, and you hook it up to a PC to control it with a web browser. This setup is actually in the back, so you can go and see it after if you want. Next. Okay, what are our project initiatives for this year? We've purchased and have a quality, I mean a really nice quality 6 gigahertz vector network analyzer, which is the fundamental instrument for most RF. Most people don't get to play with them until they're a graduate student. We're trying to break that mold big time so that we can get kids seeing one, touching one, measuring with one, without having to give agita to the grad school teacher who's got a $100,000 one that he doesn't want anybody to touch. So we're bringing $100,000 instrument technology down to the masses, if you will, democratizing that. So our goals for doing that is to get workforce training in the radio frequency wireless, 5G, 6G, new radio deployments, increase incremental exposure to radio, and other antenna measurements. We can measure our antennas. This is basically an SWR meter for those who like SWR meters. It's just an accurate and high frequency one. There's a link there. I'm doing this presentation to Microwave Update Conference in April in Connecticut, and I'm going to ask those RF experts. When was the first time you got to touch a VNA? I bet you weren't 7 years old. Okay, the next initiative is to take this technology and take some carbon dioxide measuring devices and put them in a field and measure the CO2 oxygen concentration levels with the day. This is basically the cycle of life, oxygen, carbon dioxide that plants and animals exchange. And this is an opportunity to actually measure it instead of just talking about it in a textbook. So we want to make that data available. We're probably going to encode it on an APRS format as well and send it on the APRS network along with our weather data that we collect. And we'll make it available to local schools if they want to use it. And one of the neat things about the mesh network is it not only is a radio, but it's a complete internet function. And so all of the details of internet networking are built into these experiments. So you can look at them at all types of levels, both as simple diagnostic type of things and also at fundamental protocol levels and really get into networking. So it's a great educational opportunity there. And the other thing is we just want to have radio fun. We want to go out with our radios, plug them together and see if we can QSO with somebody. And I'm hoping that as the mesh develops and we get enough of these nodes, when you go out and do a POX on a year, you'll be able to turn on your pocket Wi-Fi radio and make an extra contact with somebody's local network as well. So it's sort of a special type of QRP. So we're hoping to do something like CQ mesh and be able to connect anywhere you are. Okay, that's what we're trying to do. Okay. Okay, I like VNAs as very nice analyzers instead of vector network analyzers. I think that brings in the youth a little friendlier. This is we bought the analyzer, but we had to put it together. That's us putting it together at Fab Newport. We've now established that we're going to try to have bi-weekly meetings at Fab Newport on Monday afternoon from 3 to 5. And that connects with a project they have called Pull It Apart, where the kids come in, they take old stuff and they bang it apart and then try to reuse the equipment. They're able to do anything from take a computer apart to take a hammer to a cell phone and see what happens. Fab Newport has been graciously accepting our ability to do this with them. They're embracing what we're trying to do. It's pretty exciting, actually. Nancy's been documenting all kinds of stuff we've been doing and putting it up on the New England ARRL page. So we're getting a lot of club recognition. And that's the link to her thing, which this is a picture of Fab Newport here at the Pull Apart session. And we were there last week, and some of those young folks we told them, just come on and wander over and talk to us. So they come over and talk to us, and we ask them what they're doing, and they ask us what we're doing. We let them touch and play with things. And so I'm hoping that grows. You can come and join us. We start, the next one is March 20th on Monday afternoon. It's intersects with work, I'm sure, but if you're free and retired or whatever, you want to come down, come on down. Get grandkids you want to bring? Okay, next slide. And here we are, outstanding in our field. No chuckles about that? Okay. All right. Boy, I thought that would get a little chuckle. Anyway, it's all about punctuation. Yeah, I guess so. Okay, so this is the picture that we showed you before, but this is the location where we're going to put our initial carbon dioxide sensor, which looks like that thing on the side there. We're going to hopefully put it in a popcorn growth area so that by the time the popcorn's grown, it'll be up close to our antenna. We might put it up around 12 feet. We don't want to go too much higher, or we'll have it housing. We might get restrictions put on us. We're going to solar power it for charging the batteries for it, but we're also going to use the solar charger to figure out what the photosynthesis rate is on the CO2 sensor. So we'll have an active measurement of what's happening with sun radiation. Hopefully I'll put that to APRS. We're going to use a 2.4 gigahertz odd node. Most of the emergency management folks are in the 5.8 range. So to stop interference with those networks that are going in Rhode Island, we'll stick with the stuff that's most likely to get interfered with at 2.4 gigahertz, but we're going to operate over very short distances, and therefore we can reuse those frequencies very effectively without interfering. The only people we'll be interfering with is ourselves, and that we can control because we're all friends, right? Okay, and I'm looking for somebody who wants to put a node in their house to be part of the mesh. The more dense the mesh, the easier it is to run. Anybody who's interested in, maybe coughing up something under $100 to put one of these together and wants to put it in and give us a location, we'll try to get them into the mesh. The mesh automatically links any radios it sees. So if it sees a radio show up in the mesh, you get added to the routing table, and you're on the network. You can talk and communicate with all of the mesh nodes in the network. There will also be a mesh that we tie into that does all of New England. ARRL is doing a big thing on that. This is not that network, but it can tie into it. Next. We're not alone doing this. There's a couple projects in the UK, by the way, that RS Online has done. One is a little bird thing that goes in a classroom, detects CO2, and if it sees the CO2 level rising, it starts to chirp until it gets really ticked off and says, "Hey, open window." I don't know exactly what it says, but anyway, they came up with a sensor plug thing too that you can plug sensors in. So we've got some, base technology we can copy, if you will. This is all open source stuff. Those are they'll post these slides so you can go to these sites and find out more. There's a video on this. Okay? Like one time.
I don't have a watch anymore.
8:19.
Oh, where are you? Okay. Just in case, this is something I picked up in the early days of the project. Right now, we're in wave, we've passed wave one on wireless industry. There were about 200,000 jobs created by 2007. In 2019, there was about 2.2 million jobs that have been created in the wireless business. But the expectation is that by 2034, the 100% of the economy will be affected by wireless. How many of you have a radio with you right now? How many have a cell phone? Okay, you all have radios, so you're all set. All right, so we think that we need to create a culture of understanding among young folks because this is very technical stuff as it gets fully deployed, and we need people who really know how to deal with some of these things. So we're going to expose them to some of it early. They won't get it all, but some of them will hopefully come and make our radios work later when I'm fully retired. So that's it. Next slide, please. Next. Okay. There are other mesh projects going on. As I mentioned, I wanted to give a nod to those. The Western states started this ARTEN network. They did a wonderful job up at Silicon Valley reprogramming what's called Open Wireless Router Tech, Open WRT. It's a Linux implementation that they recompiled and made it work on the handbands. A lot to that. That's the original ARTEN mesh website. Lots of things going on there in emergency management as well. The New England division of ARRL has a protection and use group, and it has a mesh subgroup, which is working on deploying mesh through all of New England. That's their website, and they meet with the alternately with the RFI group. And the original funding for this came through a thing called ARDC. They had a lot of money from a sale of some assets they had, and they issued a, I think it's $40-something thousand the Rhode Island group to set up mesh nodes on the old fire towers that are around and they have the okay with DEM to do that. So the Department of Environmental Management is letting them use the fire towers, and in exchange, the mesh nodes will take camera imagery of where the fire nodes were, and they'll be able to localize fire events and other events from the towers directly on the mesh nodes. So it's a win-win in my mind, and those mesh nodes will be around on the fire towers. So if you're out doing a POTA and you have a mesh node, you can link right into those things. So that's another opportunity for CQ mesh. There's also a talk March 25th at the Maine State Convention. I know you're all going to that, but the grant link is there as well for the fire tower project. Next. Okay, to make this fun, if we're going to go out and do a little bit of POTAing or whatever with our mesh nodes and being out, I thought we'd make a couple contest things out of it. Ham seems to like contests. So we came up with this concept of DYDX instead of DX. Yeah, you'd think in calculus that should ring a few bells, but if it doesn't, it's okay. It stands for distance in yards, DX in the conventional sense. So what we did is we took a mile and we made it, we took a yard, 1 yard of distance, 3 feet, and made it into a mile if you do it at 1 to 10 gigahertz. And so if you connect to another node for 1 yard, you get 1 mile of DX. So if you get about 7 miles away and you figure out how to do that, and believe me, it's not that trivial. If you get one of these nodes to work at 7 miles point to point without 10,000 watts, we'll give you the equivalent of going halfway around the world. Because 7 or 8 miles is about 180 degrees of radio transmission. So you get a certificate called the DYDX certificate. There's a bunch of rules to this. You can't do it by using repeaters because then you would have avoided the problem of a direct path communication. So the idea is you have to have a direct path communication. But once you get onto that node, once you've done that pi at a mile or 2 miles, you now can talk to all the nodes, even if you're connected. But it would be cheating to say I talked to somebody in California, because you could, in theory, just go through the internet and all over the place. That's not really a challenge. So it has to be a direct path. I'm looking forward to the day, though, when a direct path would be from here to the moon, not to the moon and back. Somebody will have a mesh transmitter node sitting on the moon at some moon station, and we'll be able to make a direct contact to the moon with a 1 to 10 gigahertz radio as well. That will be extraterrestrial DYDX, but no repeaters. You can't go up to a repeater geostationary and then come back down. That's cheating. You only get the distance to the geosynchronous satellite. Okay, so that's DYDX. We've issued 1 certificate for somebody who did a crazy thing. That's in QST, but you're all welcome to tell me how far you were able to get 2 nodes to talk, and I'll give you a DYDX certificate for how many yards that were between them. We're also thinking of a WAN award, wide area network being a networking thingy. And we'll have one in Roman numerals 1, 5, 10, 50, and 100. So if you work all the nodes, if you can demonstrate that you've connected to all the nodes on a network that might have 100 nodes, you'll get a WAN-C award. So you worked all the nodes. If you're on a net, all you have to do is, actually connect to each one and take some data off it. So that isn't that hard to do it, believe it or not. But it is a challenge, and we thought we'd start with 1, so that the novice who puts 1 in and gets it to work has already learned how to do it, and therefore I think it's worth an award. Next. Got other contest ideas. I have no rules for any of these, like the Web Award for Worked Every Band, or the ARTEN Can Award, the Worked All Modes, and then the Moon Earth Connection, we'll call that the Men Award. And then if you connect to a planet or a moon of another planet, we'll call that the Woman Award, the World or Moon to Earth Network. So we got everybody in here. Next. Okay, so if you have any ideas, you're interested in this, you might know my email, but there it is. And you can follow us on our club website at w1sye.org. And in the future, we're going to show how art and technology works in our seminars. We'll be building projects based on building web-based RF radio control panels. So because we have an internet effective connection between A and B, we could control an RF radio visually, like you would when you go on the internet and you do a remote control radio. Have you ever done that? That amount of bandwidth's available to the mesh. So you could, in fact, put up an HF radio someplace and control it remotely via the mesh. So that's just an idea something to try. We're actually looking at sending intermediate frequency digital samples around, so you can do your own decoding at home from some remote radio. And we don't want to sell commercial internet access this way because it's a commercial activity. And I don't remember why I put that in. But you don't need, oh yeah, that's the point. You don't need the internet to make this work. It's its own intranet. It's its own independent internet that runs anything internet over it. Okay, next. I think that's my last slide. Any questions? Yes, Dave.
What's being done to check here?
Which gear? The gear we're putting into Garmin Farm or in general?
General, this kind of stuff.
The question is, what are we doing to control or protect the gear against electromagnetic pulse and events that might occur? That's a pretty general question. That's not specific to our to the mesh network. Any piece of electronics is subject to an EMP hit, and there are ways to connect. Those are ways to cover them. Yes, Dave.
Was it the California on this because they wanted something to be a backup?
Oh, different question. Well, EMP is a pretty long discussion, and I'm not an expert at it. However, if you had equipment in your house, mesh equipment in your house, and that was protected by Faraday cages or some type of shield, and was able to withstand an electromagnetic pulse, then like all ham gear, and this is true of all ham gear, we could then take it out after the event and set up a network, emergency communications network to restore capability. So so this doesn't apply specifically to this, but the California folks, I believe, have that in mind. So they're protecting some of their emergency equipment somehow, and expect that in that event, they would come out with the equipment and set up an entire internet in California from sea to shining sea, if you will. Yes. Keith. By who? Oh, the club? Yeah. It's about $300, right? It's not crazy expensive either. Oh, is it? Okay, I thought it was. It's called EMP Shield, right? It's called EMP Shield, I believe. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And I think, there is an activity within ARTEN, since it's emergency communications oriented, to try to protect their equipment somehow. I don't know the details. I mean, I know some about EMP, but I don't know the details of the AREDN projects in that regard. But I have a feeling that's the whole concept. Any other questions?
I think the gentleman was referring to animals. Deer. Sir,
Animals?
he's talking about animals. He's talking about deer.
Yeah.
Deer. Radio.
Gear, radio gear. That was the. Yeah, I've got good ears too. They just don't hear anything. It's the right size, I guess. Any other questions?
Technically augmented.
They could be technically augmented, which I'm getting some stress factors added to my life on that subject as well.
Are there any permanent nodes activated on the island?
Are there any permanent nodes activated on the island? Yes, there is a permanent node put up by Mike Cullen. It's still up, right? Yeah, it's on the fire tower at.
But I got no neighbors.
There's one in Tiverton too.
And
Okay,
I'm also a gate.
a gateway.
A
So,
gate.
okay, so there's one Tiverton. So you go drive around near Dave's house. You can connect your node to him.
It's 5 gig.
There's a 5 gig node up at the fire station, which points to Providence and gets to Providence at 5 gigs. It's kind of cool. Been up for a while, and also has a local.
Yeah, that's like.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we'll give you a DYDX certificate. Absolutely. Yeah, well, I mean, Providence, well, like, was it 6 miles? 10 miles? 18 miles? Yeah, that might be extraterrestrial. It certainly represents going around the Earth once. Around, yeah, about going around the Earth long path. So it's about a long path communications in this. That's the kind of the fun about DYDX, I thought, was you can talk about it in terms of equivalency to something else. You can, by the way, get a DYDX certificate on the HF bands. It's just that we derate them back to HF. So there's a derating factor, so that if you're below 30 megahertz, you get exactly the same as if 1 mile becomes 1 mile. So we figured all that out. We got all that. I got more spreadsheets on that than you want to shake a stick at. Any other questions? We've got plenty of energy to go around here. If you want to join us to just see what we're doing. I will open up the vector network analyzer on the front here for you to see if you want. And I'm not going to use it tonight, but we do use it at the events to practice how to use one, and all kinds of talent up and down the ladder. Some people are really good at it, have had experience with it, and they help us. And then some people have never seen one before. And I try to relate it back to an ohm meter, which it generally is. It's basically just measuring ohms. You might not agree with that, but it does. And so it's really an ohm meter, two-dimensional ohm meter. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. Join us.
Want to stop the recording? I can do that somewhere. Yeah. Okay, I think I'm gonna end. Do you guys want to talk and chat at all, or do you want me to kill Bob, why don't you kill the session whenever you feel everybody's bored out of their mind?
Well, I'm just joining in as a user. I don't have that ability. I can leave myself, but that's the extent of it.
Well, it's getting along, so I'm gonna try to figure out how to stop the recording here.
Okay.
And unless you got the control handy.
Well, again, I have no control capability.
Oh, you don't? Okay, all right, here we go. All right, here it is. Done.